A single death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic. Tonight, we explore the life of history's most powerful dictator, a man whose very name became a warning whispered across half the world, Joseph Stalin. To some, he was the leader who saved civilization from fascism, who turned a backwards empire into a superpower. To others, he was the century's greatest monster, architect of famines that killed millions and purges that destroyed a generation. He rose from nothing, a cobbler's son with a withered arm and a pockmarked face. By the time he died, he controlled the fate of 800 million people. His path from the seminary to the Kremlin traces through revolution and civil war and the systematic, ruthless destruction of every rival and friend. Lenin warned the party to remove him. Trotsky called him a mediocrity. They all underestimated the man who collected power the way others collected stamps, carefully, methodically, until he held every piece that mattered. The boy, nicknamed So-So, who sang in the church choir, would become the dictator who dynamited those same churches. The revolutionary who fought the Tsar's oppression would create a police state that made the old empire look gentle. He defeated Hitler, carved up Europe, and died believing everyone around him was plotting his destruction. Perhaps he was right. His own daughter said his final gesture was lifting his hand as if cursing them all. Before we begin this journey through one of history's darkest lives, I want to know what you think. Was Stalin a necessary evil who modernized Russia and saved it from destruction? Or was he a paranoid murderer who set his country back generations? Let me know in the comments. And if you're finding value in these explorations of history's most complex figures, please consider subscribing. It helps others discover these stories. Now, settle back, dim the lights, and prepare to meet the man who built socialism in one country on a foundation of bones. The revolutionary who became a dictator and, in his own mind at least, almost a god. This is the bedtime biography of Joseph Stalin. Chapter 1. The Boy from Gori. The story begins in a small Georgian town where the truth itself was negotiable. Ioseb Juhashvili entered the world on December 6, 1878, though he'd later trim a year from his life. The official Soviet record would claim 1879. Stalin himself made this decision in the 1920s, already practicing the art of rewriting history on the smallest canvas available, his own birth certificate. Gori sat in the shadow of the Caucasus Mountains, a place where empires had collided for centuries. The town's medieval fortress overlooked narrow streets where Georgian, Armenian, Russian, and Turkish voices mixed in the market squares. Here, among the cobblestones and Orthodox churches, legends sprouted about young So-So's parentage. Some whispered he was the bastard son of a local prince. Others claimed Emperor Alexander III himself had fathered the child during some improbable Georgian adventure. The truth was both simpler and harder. His mother, Keek, worked her fingers raw as a washerwoman. His father Bezo made boots and drank. But Bezo wasn't the simple brute that Soviet hagiography would later paint. The man could read Georgian, spoke Russian, Armenian, and Turkish. In his better years, he ran a successful workshop with apprentices and steady orders. The family lived in a brick house with a cellar and wine storage. They weren't wealthy, but they weren't starving either. Soso was their third attempt at a child. The first two boys had died before their first birthdays, making him precious cargo in his mother's eyes. Then came the unraveling. Bezo's drinking intensified. The workshop failed. The beatings started. One friend remembered Bezo grabbing little Soso by the legs and hurling him to the floor so hard that blood pooled in the child's urine for days. Another time, Keke threw herself between them, taking blows meant for her son, until neighbors pulled the drunk cobbler away. Eventually, Bezo disappeared entirely, drifting between Tiflis factories, leaving his family to survive on Keke's work, scrubbing other people's laundry. Disease and accident marked the boy as surely as poverty. Smallpox arrived when he was 7, leaving his face cratered like a battlefield map. Then came the carriage accident, or maybe it was a sledge, the stories vary, that mangled his left arm. The local hospital's treatment made things worse. Blood poisoning set in. The arm withered, growing shorter than the right, bending at an awkward angle he'd spent his life trying to hide in photographs. He had another secret too. 2 toes on his left foot were fused together, a detail the Soviet autopsy would confirm decades later. Yet Soso wasn't some Dickensian orphan shuffling through cobwebbed misery. His mother's fierce ambition lifted him above his circumstances. While other boys his age worked in the fields or workshops, he attended school. The Chakviani family, local nobility with a priest in their ranks, took an interest in the bright, scarred boy. Father Christopher Chakviani pulled strings to get him into the Gori theological school in 1888. The priest's children tutored him in Russian, opening doors that most Georgian peasant boys never even knew existed. At school, Soso thrived. The records show a model student earning excellent marks in sacred history, Orthodox catechism, and liturgical chant. His voice rang pure in the church choir. He memorized prayers in Old Church Slavonic. The Russian teacher, a disciplinarian the boys called the gendarme, made him a classroom assistant. This was the first taste of authority, however small, and he savored it. Decades later, in 1944, Stalin would remember these schoolmates with unexpected tenderness. He sent money to old friends from Gori, notes written in Georgian and signed with his childhood name. Grisha, he wrote to one, "Accept this small gift from me, yours, Soso." By then he'd already murdered millions, but something in him still remembered being 9 years old and singing in the church choir while his mother watched from the women's section, her calloused hands folded in prayer. Stalin himself would later claim his parents did not treat me badly by any means. A peculiar statement from a man whose father beat him unconscious and whose mother worked herself to exhaustion. But perhaps that's how it seemed to him, just the normal texture of life in 1880s Georgia, where most families buried half their children and wives, expected bruises. Or perhaps he was already practicing the art he'd perfect as dictator, transforming suffering into strength through sheer force of narrative will. Chapter 2. The Failed Seminarian. September 1894. Soso entered the Tiflis Theological Seminary, carrying his mother's dreams in a small cloth bundle. The building rose like a fortress above the city, all stone corridors and echoing prayers. Here, they would make priests out of Georgian boys,